scarcity mentality in ourselves that quite often we fail to look outwards. We have always had this protectionist view of keeping people out of Barbados, as opposed to embracing them inward and then taking our great things that we've created, like fast foods or franchises or other things, and blossoming in the wider Caribbean. We instead take an approach and say, don't bring that good idea here. We have our own good ideas. So it is not surprising to me that some people who have a scarcity mentality may be afraid. On the other hand, as I say, I see this as a huge opportunity. I wish we had free movement globally, frankly, because I'd like to see the entire world as a market. But this is a start. We can start with these few countries. Personally, I spend a lot of time looking at the opportunities in the wider English-speaking Caribbean, and from there, the broader Caribbean, ultimately Latin America, and maybe even the Americas. So, what is different, though, sir, about this piece of legislation than what we had before? And I'm no expert on it, but from the outside looking in, we had free movement of skilled nationals. We had that. And there were certain tests you had to go through and forms you had to follow and so on, but we could move skilled nationals around the Caribbean. So now, after this bill is passed, retroactively to October 1st, we have that free movement is not just among skilled people, it's among everyone. And it's not just skilled and not skilled, it's also, there's no other test. Is it, are you an old person or a young person? That's not in it at all. It's just simply where you're a citizen. There's no test to say, are you healthy or unhealthy? Some people have raised that question about whether or not our healthcare system can take, perhaps, the unhealthy. So, what problem were we seeking to solve, besides what has been well covered here, sir, about our need to integrate, our desire to integrate, our desire to be a bigger community within the world? What problems are we seeking to solve? And, sir, I drew my conclusions from that on my own, and also in some reading, and I thought that what this might be addressing is population growth, lack of labor, lack of skilled trades, and also an aging population. These were many of the things that this is said to address. And sir, in the newspaper, if you don't mind me quoting from it, the Barbados Today on the 22nd of August, 2025, they carried, and I'm happy to, if that citation is not good enough, I'm happy to give you a copy of it. There's an article that reported on comments made by our own Prime Minister on this subject. And I quote from the paper, and it said, Barbados, as it said Motley, but I'll say Prime Minister Motley made clear, is charting a different course that is rooted in a necessity to address demographic and population challenges. Faced with a declining and aging population, the government is proposing immigration and citizenship reforms that she says will prioritize fairness, skills, and deep family ties. The article goes on to say the Prime Minister insisted that dollars will not be the overriding factor. Children of the diaspora down to great-grandchildren are expected to find a path to citizenship. Skilled workers and investors will also be welcomed but not bought into citizenship. Preferential treatment will be given to fellow CARICOM nationals. Now, sir, that's the end of the quote from this particular article. Obviously, at the time, the Prime Minister was not just speaking about this pending bill, but other immigration reforms, which I believe might be coming, but in many ways speaking to this one. So that made me think about this a bit. In the opening lines of this article, the Prime Minister was quoted as saying, Prime Minister Mia Amor-Watley has reaffirmed that Barbadian citizenship, in quotes, is not and never will be a commodity for purchase. Prime Minister was referring there, sir, clearly to the Citizenship by Investment Programme.
Senator Malou, just to note though, We usually don't take quotes from the newspaper, especially quotes of reported speech. You can make reference to an article. The article stands on its own. It can be right, it can be wrong. But in terms of attributing quotes, especially from honorable members of either house, we rather take a parliamentary record to attribute the quote, because an error could be compounded and permanently read into the record where we're quoting reported speech. So you can make reference to the article and indicate, what it says and discuss it, fine. But the quotes, especially quotes of reported speech, are unverifiable. Let's put it that way. Newspapers are usually right, but they only have the wrong 1% of the time, and the 1% is what we quote and read into Hansard that even the courts take as a useful indication of what parliamentarians are thinking on a given matter. So could reference, but don't use their quotes as your quotes.
Thank you, Mr. President, for being so directed. And having been misquoted many times in the media myself, I would like to accept that you're absolutely correct. And I will refer to this article, but do not know if it's an accurate reflection of what was actually said. So I gather that it is generally felt that the Citizenship by Investment program is not one that Barbados is pursuing. We have found that our citizenship is not a commodity to be purchased. So that then leads me to look at the 3 countries that are included in this first wave, because that, I guess, is my first point I would like to make on this bill. The actual bill, I believe it is in section 7 of the bill, the amendment of the schedule. The minister may by order amend the schedule. The schedule today has 3 countries listed in it, sir. St. Kitts, St. Vincent, and Belize.
Dominica and Belize.
St. Vincent, Dominica, and Belize. Thank you. So, in Dominica, there is a Citizenship by Investment program. Citizenship by Investment program in Dominica, which is now part of our free movement, allows for the purchase of a citizenship in Dominica for a price of $200,000 US. There is absolutely no requirement to ever live there, and you will become a Dominican citizen. By virtue of purchasing that citizenship and never living there, I believe one of the unintended consequences of this bill is now to extend to those persons who have contributed to Dominica the right to live and work in Barbados. So let's just extrapolate that, understand. Dominica decides who gets to be a citizen. They do their own vetting. You can believe it to be robust or not robust, but they do it. Having satisfied their criteria, they receive a fee. In one case of $200,000. If it's a real estate, the investment is a different levels, but minimum $200,000. They've received it. Having done that, they're issued with a passport of Dominica, and now after this bill, they have a right to live and work in Barbados. So that's my second issue. The first issue was the schedule today contains 3 countries. It can be amended under Section 7 by the minister can make an order. My second issue is that the citizenship by investment persons who are citizens are afforded exactly the same privileges as those who were born and raised, etc. there. That's my second point. And a reminder, these are people who never lived there. Now, there are other countries in the CARICOM which I assume at some point in time we are going to expand to. So let me give you an example, sir, of another country who has a citizenship by investment program and what we might be faced with if that country ever made it onto the schedule, which the minister can add to. That country I'd like to just give you some information on would be St. Kitts. St. Kitts is the country that pioneered this. In fact, they have a citizenship by investment program since 1984. Today, St. Kitts, in its last population survey of 2024, is reported to have a resident population of 46,843 people. That's their resident population. Sir, I'm sure it's going to come as a great surprise to you to find out that over 50,000 CBI passports have been sold in St. Vincent. St. Kitts. I'm having a Saint problem today. Maybe it's because it's after lunch. In St. Kitts, yes. So over 50,000 CBI passports have been sold, more than their actual population. And we just need to be aware of this, because I think that our bill should in some way have recognized the difference between a naturally born CARICOM national and or naturalized citizenship by descent, but a purchased citizenship without a requirement ever to have lived in that country, for me, is a bridge too far. Not, as I said, sir, at the beginning, not the free movement, not the integration, because I am a glass half full. I am happy to have it. But we are extending this, remember, we're extending this in the case of Dominica to people who have made a contribution to Dominica to buy a citizenship, may never have lived there, but now have the right to live in and reside in Barbados. So that was my point number 2. Thirdly, sir, I'd like to make another point on this before I move to just some other cleaning up matters. The third point would be this. In the comments that I have heard in the public media, and I've heard myself, the Prime Minister and others made, and I have made here as well, when we talk about the National Insurance Scheme and the aging population, etc. We need young people. We need young people in Barbados at a rate that we can't procreate at that level. We need the immigration. We need immigration of young people. But there's nothing in this bill that speaks to any age limitations. Now, it is not uncommon, sir, to find immigration that is limited at some age. That it says, well, free movement for work, for whatever, but the status at some age, really and truly, you're no longer part of the productive sector. Maybe you're in the retirement sector, but we can't. So we don't want to bring, and let's put this in straightforward terms. We don't want to have a situation where we're going to put more of a burden on the NIS or the healthcare system, etc., without having the commensurate young people that we want in for the skills, etc. So I would have hoped, perhaps, that we would have found, without discriminating, found a way to have this legislation reflect really what we were seeking to achieve, which is we need more young, productive people. And on that point, sir, I will possibly digress, because I didn't really plan to include this, but I've heard too often this argument about businesses hiring people and paying them less than minimum wage or whatever it should be. Sir, in my experience, I have not seen businesses who are able to import labor into Barbados, pay for housing for them, pay for all the things that have to be paid for, and then pay them less than what, in overall, the total cost, pay less than what was already paying. Because the reality is, the skills are just not available. No one is getting someone to fly here from Colombia, China, wherever it might be that I'm hearing that these workers are coming from, housing them, feeding them, providing medical care, whatever it is, and that total doesn't add to more than if you had that labor here in Barbados. I have not seen it, personally. What I can tell you I've experienced is that we have a significant shortage in Barbados of semi-skilled labor, if that's the right word. I'd say to all who can hear me now in Barbados, if you are a mason or a carpenter or a painter, go around to the contractor companies today, you will get a job. I know this because within the world, the businesses that I operate, we are struggling to find a painter. If you can identify a hammer, apparently you're a carpenter. If you can identify a trowel, you're a mason. Right? That's where we're at. And we were at this before, sir. We were at this before when we had, at this point before, when we had a lot of Guyanese people that were working here. But it was covered before how perhaps we dealt with that rightly or wrongly. And today, Guyana is a place of opportunity. We don't have the same number of Guyanese workers available to us. So I embrace this. I'm hopeful that it will give us that. So I do not see these rogue employers who are bringing people on an airline flight, having to find housing in this very expensive housing market to house them and then pay them very little. I just don't see it. So, sir, I've made my 3 points regarding the schedule, which can be modified without coming back or any debate. I would actually hope that if that schedule is going to be modified, if other countries are going to be added to that schedule, that we would have some type of debate about it, recognizing what country that might be and the pros and cons of it. In this case, we have these 3 countries, which we really hadn't debated, but we're dealing with the legislation now. What this allows you to do is to add any others to it. Secondly, I would have hoped that it would have addressed the aging population. This may, in fact, make things worse for us and not better. And I have identified the CBI loophole, which, in fact, what this will now allow you to do, some person, is simply to buy that very cheap CBI in Dominica and then get the benefits of living and working in Barbados. And that was never the intention. That is a loophole that, in my opinion, should be blocked. But, sir, while I have the floor and I have the time today, I want to speak on one related matter, and I will relate it by saying that enforcement of our legislation troubles me. Sir, we spend a lot of time, very valuable time in here, debating in a robust way laws that are passed. It's done in the other place as well, and even before it gets there, lots of people are thinking about this and drafting it and thinking about the implications. And we don't pass these laws willy-nilly without thought. One such law that I was very pleased to see passed in Barbados was mandatory seatbelts. But, sir, less than 2 weeks ago, a young man lost his life on the west coast of this island. Just minutes from saying goodbye to his mum, stood in the back of a van. That van was involved in an accident, and the young man died, as reported in the newspaper. I wasn't there to see it, but there is no doubt that the young man died. Sir, it troubles me greatly that we don't enforce that regulation. Why did we pass it? Any day today, any day you would like, sir, come with me. Let us go and see the number of open back vans with rows of seating in it, and no one is enforcing the seatbelt legislation. Or, sir, let's go one step further. Let's look at the helmet legislation for the motorcycles. Why aren't we enforcing it? These are well thought out laws that you bring us together, we debate them, we look at them, but then they're not enforced. That young man shouldn't have lost his life. And, sir, on that subject, I should not be driving at 60 to 80 kilometers, whatever the correct speed limit is at the point where I am, and be passed by a person on a bicycle without a helmet because it is an e-bike. I think, sir, now I don't believe that we have a law for it, but maybe we should be looking very carefully at any form of assisted pedal bike should be classified as a motorcycle, because it really is quite strange. We have all kinds of problems in motorcycles already, but these are completely unregulated. You don't even need a license. But my point, sir, is we have laws, we need to enforce them. We spend time looking at them, and I could go through many of these examples. So in conclusion, sir, I just want to remind you of the 3 points I made. One, sir, that the schedule as it is can be amended with no further discussion, and countries can be added. I would like to hear very much a commitment from the government and whenever successive governments that there would be some type of cooling off period, some type of debate period, some type of consultation period before other countries are added to that list. Secondly, sir, that we consider very carefully whether or not it would be appropriate to have an age limit such that our healthcare system, our retirement system, whatever, is not burdened. We are seeking to expand our population with productive individuals. And thirdly, sir, I do not think there is any doubt in my mind that the CBI in countries where they have a citizenship by investment program, which we have categorically stated, as was reported, is not and will never be a commodity for purchase, our citizenship. There is a loophole now that you can have a route to citizenship in Barbados by first achieving the citizenship by CBI in another country and then residing here for the period and naturalizing as is allowed in our existing laws. So, with those few comments, sir, I support this legislation because I come at it from the point of view of an abundance mentality. I come of it from the point of view of the opportunities that Barbadians should be looking at in these other islands and other territories, as opposed to thinking that we need to be so insulated and keep everyone out. So with those few words, I'm obliged to you, sir.
Thank you, Member Senator Maladu. Senator Cummings.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'd like to move the suspension of this sitting for a period of 15 minutes. If colleagues would turn their attention to the screen, you can see that the angles of the cameras are off. There is a problem with the camera system, and the technicians are waiting outside to adjust them, and they've asked for 10 minutes, and I've asked for 15 minutes to give them enough time to actually get it right, so when we reconvene, all of the members would be able to see their contributions on the screen as required.
The question is that this sitting be suspended until 3:50 p.m. 3:50 p.m. Will all honorable senators in favor please say aye? Aye. Those against please say no. The things the ayes have it. This sitting is suspended until 3:50 p.m. today.